everyone, welcome back to Shoot from the Hoop, where we discuss all things FITASC and sporting clays. My name is Jeff Jensen. I'm your host, and we have an outstanding guest today coming from Kansas, Drew Ricketts. Drew is the Chief FITASC Referee for our national organization, the National Sporting Clays Association. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to bring him in, talk about FITASC, talk about reffing. But there's also a lot of commonalities here, Drew. You are in academics. You're an associate professor. You also are the host of a podcast, and the podcast is called Fins, Fur, and Feathers. We're going to touch base on all of these. I don't think we're going to run out of things to talk about.
No, probably not.
Sounds good. Well, let's get started. So I can speak for a lot of shooters. And when we sign up on Score Chaser for big shoots, the first thing that gets sold out are the FITASC events.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're signing up 10, 11 months before the shoot even. And if you don't sign up, you get put on a waiting list and you got to wait for someone to drop out. So I think it's great that you took on the role as the chief FITASC referee for the NSCA, because FITASC is that one area where when you go to shoot, you don't have to worry about trapper issues because all of our refs are so well trained. So the floor is yours. Tell us about how you rolled into this role and what your responsibilities are.
Well, I guess rolling into that role has been just almost a lifelong process for me. I started refereeing FITASC when I worked at Claythorne Lodge as a youngster. Scott Williams, who was the chief before me, the first time he reffed FITASC, I was a trapper for him, sitting on a manual machine, and so. I was a trapper back in the old days when everything was manual, and kind of worked up through the process of a club having automated machines, and filled in as a referee when I was needed at that time. I think the first shoot that I actually reffed the whole shoot was the World Championship that Claythorne hosted in 2003. And then I kind of took a hiatus from the shooting sports industry when I was finishing school, and started a business, and then went to grad school. And then I got out of grad school and got the current job that I have now. And that was a cool opportunity to get back into shooting sports. Started refereeing a lot again around 2016, traveling with Scott. I was kind of part of his regular crew. And then it was time for a change for Scott, and I was asked to step into that role, and I was very glad to.
Oh, that's incredible. Like I mentioned before, one of the wonderful things about FITASC, and it's an international organization, right? And we follow all the different rules.
Mm-hmm.
But when we go to these shoots, the referees are so well trained. I did FITASC at South Florida a couple weeks ago. I did FITASC at Vero, and I did FITASC at Jack Links. And the common theme is A, great targets, and B, wonderful referees.
Yeah. And I think that's why FITASC sells out so quickly, right? Is because the pace of the game allows it to be a little bit more enjoyable, maybe less of a grind than sporting clays is sometimes for somebody who likes that style of shooting. But you also tend to get really nice targets. I do a little bit of target setting, and I have to be careful not to set good FITASC targets on every station when I'm setting sporting clays, because then a sporting clay course gets too hard, right? And so we get those good targets, but then we've also got referees, like you're saying, not only are they well trained, but most of them have a ton of experience, and a lot of them shoot as well. And so they see both sides of the coin. They know what it's like to interact with the referee. They know what can be helpful, like describing where to look for a target the first time you're going to look for it when we're showing pairs or showing targets, and that sort of thing. But because a lot of them are also shooters, they may know that I need to just be part of this course, kind of be in the background rather than being somebody who's out here interfering with things as well. And one of the things that I've really encouraged referees to do when I train refs, but also when I work with folks who have been doing it for a long time, is I think the philosophy that I learned from Scott is our number one role is to keep people safe. And then we need to make sure that the rules are fairly applied to everyone, regardless of how we apply those rules. And then be a facilitator of the sport and help people enjoy themselves. And so that's kind of my philosophy and what I try and teach people and coach people into doing if they're having a little bit of trouble doing all those things. We've got a fantastic group of referees, and sometimes they care about what they're doing so much that they can get a little bit wound up sometimes. And that's part of the role that being chief referee involves. Is if there's a complaint about a referee, then I'm the person that gets to, talk to the people that are involved in that complaint, both shooters and referees. I've had referees complain about shooters, but I've also had shooters complain about referees. And so helping people get through challenging situations sometimes is part of it, but we've got great people and that's pretty easy.
That's great. So I became a certified ref in FITASC back in 2017 when I lived in Florida. And there's some nuances to the rules. And so I was going to ask you just off the top of your head, what are some of the rules that are interesting that wouldn't be just readily apparent to a new shooter who's starting FITASC?
I think some of the ones that are clear and obvious to a referee that may not be something that a new shooter would know is not being able to make a move on a target until that target is visible. And that's one of those rules that I feel like it's partially on the referee to help be a facilitator in that instance. And if I'm refereeing a peg or a parkour where I've got a target that there's a pretty good delay on, I will just tell the squad right out when we're viewing it that there's a delay on this target. I cannot see that target come off the arm, and neither can you. And that's all I say. But folks who are paying attention are going to catch that. And I've had newer shooters that will say, well, what do you mean by that? And so that's an opportunity to help them learn the rules. Right. And so let's see other things that might not be obvious. To a new shooter, 1 1/8 loads aren't allowed. We're restricted to 1 ounce, and there's a lot of folks who are newer to the game that think that has something to do with fairness to game or not being able to shoot farther distances and those sorts of things, and really it has nothing to do with that. When I first got involved with FITASC, it was the only sporting game in North America where you could shoot 1 1/4 loads. You could shoot pigeon loads in FITASC. And the reason that it's gone to 1 ounce and doesn't allow 1 1/8 is because a lot of the countries in Europe where FITASC is mostly shot have lead deposition restrictions that restrict them to 28 grams of lead. And so that's why that's there. What else?
How about the line where we have to keep the gun before we can move?
Yeah. So we've got a line. It's the way it's written in the rule book is kind of interesting, but it's from an imaginary line drawn down the center of your shoulder. And if you centered your hand up or something up between the outside of your shoulder and the outside of your neck from that imaginary line at the peak, we come down 25 centimeters, and the highest point of the buttstock has to be below that line. It can be touching the line, but it can't be above the line. And the buttstock also has to be touching the trunk of your body when you're in the ready position. So when you call pull, you're not supposed to be moving around. That's one that I've had to coach some referees on a little bit, because we'll have folks that sway a little bit when they're standing there, and that's not a violation of the rule. We're just not supposed to make a move on the target. But until that target's visible or until we've called pull. So yeah, the line is very important. We've got to keep our feet within the hoop, the square. We use a 1 meter hoop or square that is our shooting stand in FITASC. And your toe can be up against the edge of that boundary, but it can't be over the top of the boundary. So that's one that a newer shooter might not know about. What else? So those are the most important things. The most important things are keep your gun below the line, don't move until the target's visible, and shoot ounce and 1 ounce loads or less. And everything else, really you can watch what's going on. And if you're paying attention, then you're going to see the differences. But that's the main things we need to worry about.
That makes sense. I know in the past, Drew, a few times when I've got a real fast quartering bird, I've creeped a little bit, and sometimes you get called on that. What's the official stance on that? You can't move till you see it, right?
Yeah, you can't move till the target's visible, and most of the time when that happens, it's not intentional. But I will say that there are some folks who are very good at starting that gun to moving very slowly right before they call pull to gain an advantage. And it takes some experience as a referee to catch that going on. And I wouldn't call that outright cheating, but it is a violation of the rule, right? But trap targets, quick quartering targets, they're very easy to accidentally make that move just because you're trying to be quick.
That makes sense. And then also there's some, like we have to wear shoes, right? Like tennis shoes or shoes. You can't wear sandals, for example, in the feet.
Yeah, you can't. And that goes back to how the game is shot overseas. A lot of, again, like with the shot thing, we tend to think about FITASC as a ladies or gentleman's sport more, but really that has to do with safety. And people say, well, the shoe doesn't keep my toe from getting blown off, and I agree with that. It's actually not about shooting yourself. It's when we go overseas and there's a world championship, it may be in a place where there's never been a shoot before. There's not a club there. The clubhouse is a tent set up in a field, and we're shooting, for example, in Hungary, an old bauxite mine. And the trails go in for months before the shoot. They actually have to clean all that up afterwards because it's on government land. I was talking to those, and this doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but it stands out to me. I was talking to the Forest Service guys that set that last world up in Hungary, and they have to pick up every wad. They had to pick up every target piece that was bigger than a centimeter after that shoot. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me, the amount of cleanup that they had to do afterwards. But so the closed toe deal is actually about walking on rough trails, not stubbing our toes. We're in the U.S. used to being able to drive a buggy up fairly close to where the shooting position is going to be. Over there, the distance between the parking area and the last peg on the farthest parkour that you're going to shoot from that parking area might be a half mile. And so we're walking on rough terrain. We just, that's the deal. They don't want you out there in footwear that's going to be unsafe for the conditions that you're in.
Look, that's a great clarification, Drew, because I shot twice in Hungary and one time in Italy. I mean, it was pouring rain and everything was slick, and you would not want to be in Crocs or, Birkenstocks or something.
Yeah, and the Croc thing, that's a funny one. One person in the U.S. made the decision that Crocs were going to be considered sandals. And when I have brought that up with the chief FITASC referee from Europe, who's the chief over all of FITASC, he said that as long as it's got a closed toe, it's allowable. It needs to have a strap on the back, though, so they can't have Crocs on that aren't in four-wheel drive. They got to put that strap on it in the back. But Crocs are actually allowed. And if a shooter is listening and a referee tells you Crocs aren't allowed, don't get in too bad of an argument with them, but just tell them to call me, and I'll clarify that with them, because that's something that it's hard to reach everybody with some of these things, all the FITASC referees that are out, and I sure haven't gotten everybody told. The other one that goes along with that is shorts. And so when we think about the regulation about the length of shorts, I think your shorts have to be within 2 inches or 5 centimeters of your knee. And I have brought that up with the folks over in Europe, because when I was there for that shoot in Hungary, they weren't following the shorts rule for everybody. And I asked about it, and what they said was, if they're mid-thigh or higher, they're too short. But we're not going to be out there measuring people's shorts with a ruler. And that's some of these things, they just made a rule because it fit with what is used in golf. That's where the shorts rule comes back to. And we have such dedicated and involved and dedicated, I guess, just the right word, referees that want to enforce the rules correctly and fairly, but maybe want to be to enforcing those rules to the letter, right? And so that's another one that we don't need to be out there measuring people's shorts. That might be a violation of somebody's personal space,
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'd like to stay on this topic a little bit, Drew, because this is great. Sure. So if you don't mind, I mean, for people that, we jumped right into the rules and FITASC, but can you, for our audience, kind of discuss the difference between old style FITASC and the new style, for example, that we shot at Jack Links a couple weeks ago?
Yeah. So old style FITASC, you would have as a group of machines that throw all the targets for an entire parkour, and all of the pegs for that parkour are shot off just those machines. And typically that's going to be 5 or 6 machines. And typically in that situation, you would have 3 shooting positions, or pegs is what we would typically call them. And you're going to shoot 4 singles and 2 pairs from 2 of the pegs, and you're going to shoot 5 singles and 2 pairs from 1 of the pegs. And that's how you get your 25 targets for that parkour. New style FITASC was developed purely to get more people through. At some point, I think I want to say the late 80s, but I may not be on the nail there, hitting the nail on the head there, but sometime around the late 80s, early 90s, getting enough people through at a world championship became challenging with old style. So they had to develop something else. And now we have new style. And the way new style is typically shot in North America, we would have 4 pegs or 3 pegs, depending on how many people we're needing to be able to get through to shoot. So there would be 3 or 4 shooting positions per parkour. That would stay consistent for all of the parkours that we're shooting typically at that shoot. And then each of those shooting positions is going to have its own set of machines. And so in some ways, new style and super sporting are kind of similar, because we have all of these different shooting positions where we have a set of machines there, and we're going to shoot some combination of targets off of that set of machines. And that's really where, to me, the similarities between the two disciplines end, because we still have all the FITASC rules if we're shooting FITASC, and we're shooting rounds of 25 and that sort of thing when we're shooting FITASC, versus super sport. You're shooting rounds of 50 or more commonly 100, and we don't have as many rules about what you got to shoot first and all those sorts of things. So that, for somebody who hasn't shot new style before, that's how new style and super sporting are kind of similar, and they flow similarly too, I think, because you get there, you view your targets, you shoot them, and you move on. It
Right.
doesn't take 45 minutes to get through this one spot. But other things with new style versus old style, you're going to have one referee for one parcours in old style, because that one referee is going to take you through all the pegs, all 3 pegs at that parcours. Whereas new style, we typically are going to have a different referee for each peg. So if we've got a world championship where we have 8 parcours and we've got 4 pegs per parcours, we've got 32 referees working all the time. And then we're going to have a relief ref for every 2 pegs. And then we're probably going to have 2 chief referees too. And so staffing an event like that, you're getting close to 50 people. And so it's interesting. What else? What have I not told you about new style?
No, I
That
like that. I'm trying to think back to the first time I think I experienced new style. It had to be over like in Spain or Portugal 15 years ago or something. But I didn't notice it here in the United States until more recently, I guess. But
yeah,
one of the things I like about FITASC compared to super sporting is if there's a true pair or a Raphael pair, you get to preview it.
yeah,
And you don't in super sporting.
sure,
I'm
sure.
not sure why that is, but that's how it is.
Well, I think you've already shot the targets as singles. Or are you saying you're not sure why it is in super sporting?
Yeah, I mean, I was making a sidebar comment that if you're shooting a true pair, even if it's in super sporting, in my humble thought, figured you'd like to see the true pair. And so
Yeah,
the first guy is always the guinea pig in super sporting, you know?
sure. And I think in super sporting, part of the reason that has been the case is that we haven't had a very detailed set of rules developed for super sporting.
Fair.
Excuse me. And that's one of the things that's going to be clarified in this new set of rules.
Oh,
Um, I believe that if you have a true pair or a Raphael pair, it has to be shot as a single, a true pair or a Raphael pair. The target has to be shot either as a single or as a rapport pair before it can be included in a true pair. So you're still not going to get to see the true pair before you shoot it, but you will at least have gotten some inclinings of the timing of that target, of those targets and that sort of thing before you have to attempt them in a true pair. But in FITASC, regardless of whether it's old style or new style, we don't view report pairs. And that's, of course, because we've already shot them as singles. That gives us the opportunity to find our hold points, figure out, where we need to look for the second target after we shoot the first one and all that sort of thing. And then if we're going to shoot a true pair or a Raphael pair, which most people would call following in the U.S., a following pair would be the name that we hear more often. We get to view those, and that's important to figure out timing, figure out which one you're going to shoot first, and all that sort of thing. Yeah,
yeah, and it makes it fair for everybody in the squad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The first person doesn't have to be a guinea pig. It's that way. Yeah,
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for explaining that. I mean, I'll make some little shorts of those. That's just great explanations.
yeah.
So, anything else you'd like to? Oh, I have a question. How many FITASC refs are in this country, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. We have around 25, I believe, international referees. And so to be an international referee, of course, you got your initial training when you became a regional ref. And then you have refed at least a regional or larger event to move up to being a national referee. And then you have refereed either a Grand Prix or a World Championship to move on from being a national ref to an international ref. And when you move from national to international, you also have to retake the test. And you have to pass it with a higher level of proficiency. You have to have a 90% or better rather than I think it's a 70% when you first become a regional referee. And then now it hadn't always been this way. But now in order to become an international referee, you also have to be observed. Your practical has to come from Hugh Smith, the chief FITASC referee from England. So that's that process. And so we've got 25-ish international referees. I would be pulling a number out of a hat if I was just telling you how many national and regional refs we have. Just guessing, we probably have 50 to 100 combined regional and national referees. But the challenge with that is not all of those folks will referee an event every year. And so all of those folks may not renew every year. And so we've got this big pool of people that we can draw on when we've got a shoot in their area. But, a lot of folks don't travel. So we've got our core group of referees that enjoys traveling and does that a lot. And most of those are either already international refs or on their way to being international refs and just kind of waiting on the world to come around the next time, because that's usually our opportunities when the world's here. It's kind of an interesting thing. We don't FITASC refs, if you go overseas, you don't get paid any travel money. So you would get a stipend, which would be currently 1,300 euros. And you would need to pay for your own plane ticket, your own housing, rental car. So you can't make money going overseas to ref a FITASC shoot. It has to be something that, you're using that as part of a vacation to go over there. So most of our folks, when they're moving from national to international, don't do that across the pond. They have to wait until we have a world event here. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. If there's an analogy, I used to coach baseball, and when my kids would go to like the Little League World Series, your club was responsible for bringing an umpire.
Yeah.
And they would never umpire your games, of course, but they would umpire other people's games. So
Sure.
I wonder if there's now ways to get some money involved to help the refs travel a little bit more.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've talked about a lot, and it goes to the back burner. It shouldn't go to the back burner, but it would be nice if we could develop a pot of money to support sending 2 referees overseas every year for a world championship. And we would have more international referees if we could do that too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of a lottery thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great. What do you see in the short-term future for FITASC? I know that we've had some issues. We used to have the World Cup events associated with regionals. We don't really do that anymore. Is that going to be the trend going forward, to your knowledge?
I believe so. I think the World Cup events will be separate from regionals. If that's not the case, that's a new development that's not at the forefront of my mind.
Gotcha.
I like it when they're associated with a regional because they tend to draw better.
Yeah.
But it's that bidding process was separated, and that happened before I became chief ref, and I'm not 100% sure why it happened. Actually, I do know why. It's a money thing. So for a regional, if you have a World Cup event associated with a regional or a U.S. Open, you are losing much more in association fees as a club out of each FITASC registration because Grand Prix have to pay FITASC.
Right.
Whereas just a FITASC event that's attached to a regional or a U.S. Open or our nationals, which is the biggest FITASC event in the world most years, we do not pay FITASC any fees for those events. So that was why they were separated.
So on my first blush is we'll just pass it on to the shooters because the shooters will pay it. But you also have to consider that it's a 200 bird event, not a 100 bird event. So it's a bigger.
Yeah. And there are also clubs that don't have the space to do that
right.
too.
To that point. Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. Well, gosh, what a phenomenal overview of FITASC. If you have a few more minutes, I'd love to touch base on a couple other things. You are the shotgun coach at Kansas State. You're also an associate professor there. Can you tell us a little bit about your job as the associate professor and then your affiliation with the shooting club?
Yeah, so my teaching appointment is 30% of my job. And so I teach a wildlife habitat management class. It meets 2 days a week for an hour, and then we've got a 3 hour lab 1 day a week where we go out and we put into practice what we've learned in the classroom. So, we learn about prescribed fire and timber stand improvement and planting food plots and all those sorts of things. And the students get to go out and do that in the lab. And so that's a fun and rewarding thing for me. I also teach human wildlife conflicts. So basically teaching people how to deal with problems that critters cause for people. And that could be anything from a disease, could be a mouse in your house, all the way up to polar bears killing people and eating them. So lots
Whoa.
of stuff like that. And then I teach a couple of shooting sports classes. Our program that I teach in is designed to teach people to be applied wildlife managers, but also managers of gun clubs, of outfitting businesses. It's a program that's not just designed to train wildlife biologists. It's also to train people to serve the industry that we're in the shooting sports.
Oh, that's
And
fabulous.
yeah, and so like I teach a sporting clays class where we go to a gun club and we spend a weekend there. The students, their first introduction to sporting clays is shooting a 50 bird course, and then we shoot that same course as super sporting, and then we come back in and we learn a bunch of rules and that kind of thing, and then we go back out and the students set their own course.
Oh,
We have a pile of machines and we break them up into groups and hook on the machines, and they get to set their course and learn a little bit about target setting. That one time isn't making them target setters, but we always learn that just because that's the coolest, hardest looking target does not mean that's going to be a fun station.
right.
Somebody always makes that mistake, and so that's good for them to learn. They get to see a little bit about not throwing orange targets in the sky when we and those sorts of things. And then that's we're at the gun club from 8 in the morning until about 9 o'clock at night with instruction that day, whether the kids have a gun in their hand or whether they're learning rules for a different discipline or taking the sporting clays referee test. And then the next morning, we head out and they shoot a peg. We have a whole parkour set up, but they shoot a peg of FITASC each, just for time. And half of them are on FITASC and the other half are on 5 stand. And then
Right.
we flip flop them. And so they get introduced to really all the disciplines for sporting that we shoot in the U.S. And then there's a trap and skeet class that's done on a different weekend. A couple other classes that I help with that I'm not the instructor of record for. We take students to the Whittington Center in Northeast New Mexico every year, and we spend about a week out there learning about rifle and handgun ranges and ballistics. We do a little crash course on reloading and stuff like that. And so that's the main things that I teach. I there's not a lot of people who have a PhD that shoot and work at gun clubs and do all that kind of stuff. And so when I rolled into this job, I was just immediately asked, "Hey, can you get involved with the shotgun team?" And so that was something that's just been natural for me. And so I really enjoy working with them. Our team is a club team. We don't have scholarships. It's not a sport, but the kids raise a lot of money every year. We GP Traps loans us a trailer full of machines, and we set up a sporting clays course. We've got folks that come in and shoot it every year, and so that's our big fundraiser. And they earn all of the money that they use when they're traveling around the country to shoot events, and so that's a fun thing. Yeah.
That's incredible. I just had a thought. You mentioned that you've got a a little course or a little handbook, if you will, on the rules of sporting and refereeing. Has anybody, Drew, ever thought about putting something online so that someone could take a quick little course that would take 10 minutes just to know the basic rules of sporting clays?
Yes, that's something that has been discussed multiple times, and we just need to make the time to do it.
Mhm.
And Anthony did a really good job of making a high quality brief video that gives folks a crash course to sporting clays reffing. I think this year the EC asked the NSCA to develop some more videos about that. And so I believe while we're at the World English in April, Mo Parsons and I are gonna film some, or be the talent for some videos where that are shot to train folks how to referee. But developing more of a like a Qualtrics module system that had some quizzes and videos and tests built into it and stuff like that is something that I need to do. I haven't had the time to invest in that yet, but that'll come. If I'm chief ref as long as Scott was, I'll get it done before I retire.
Well, yeah, but it would need to be for sporting clays specifically, as opposed to FITASC. I mean, FITASC too, I guess. But
well, yeah, I think we could do both. Yeah,
right.
they would be separate courses, but yeah, we would do both for sure.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a wonderful idea. It's always one of the biggest challenges is finding refs for a big shoot.
Yeah,
It's always a challenge. All right, well, that's fabulous, and congratulations on all the advocacy efforts on behalf of the shooting industry. That's fabulous.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Last segment, Drew. We have something in common. We're podcasters. Can you tell us a little about? Well, I'll start at Fins, Fur, and Feathers. I looked it up on Listen Notes. You're one of the top 10% podcasts in the world for listenership. I don't know if you knew that.
I had no idea.
Yes, indeed. So, but top 10%. There's 4 million podcasts out there, but congratulations. How'd you get involved in that, Drew?
Well, you're going to have to tell me what that is so I can look it up, because I've never heard of. You said Listen Notes?
Yeah, it's kind of like Nielsen ratings for TVs.
Okay.
Listen Notes is ratings for podcasts. That's cool. The analogy there.
Cool. Okay, so my main role at K-State is as an extension specialist. So I have a job where my big role is taking research and translating it to help people apply it to improve their lives. And so specifically as the wildlife management and control extension specialist, I'm charged with developing educational materials that are science-based about wildlife management. And one of the things that I took over when I started this job was a weekly radio program. And so it was typically a 5-minute segment that would air every Monday morning. And I did that for, I think, a year by myself. And then we hired a fisheries extension specialist too. And so we started alternating. I'd do a 5-minute segment this week, and next week he'd do one, and then we flip back and forth. And my challenge with those 5-minute radio segments is I'd get done with it and I'd think about all the really important stuff that we didn't have time to talk about. And so we both still do one of those 5-minute segments a month. But we decided to start this podcast so that we could make deeper dives into these topics, and get more information out to people who might want to use that information. And so it's fish and wildlife management information. So Fins, Fur, and Feathers was the title to include all of those things, we thought. And we alternate back and forth. One week it'll be, or they're every 2 weeks. So one episode will be a wildlife management topic, and then the next week will be a fisheries or pond management topic. And for my topics, I try and alternate back and forth between damage type problems. So let's say groundhogs getting into a garden or something like that. What do you do about groundhogs? And then the next week I'll try and do a wildlife enhancement type topic. So how do you use prescribed fire to manage for deer? And then, Joe does that same sort of thing on the pond management and fisheries management side of things. Yeah. And so
that's awesome.
That's an extension product for both of us. We're generating educational content about our area of expertise that's then going out for people to use how they wish. Yeah.
I think I saw you had 60 some episodes already. That's consistency.
Well, Joe probably gets mad at me sometimes. I feel like if we make a commitment that we're going to put out an episode every 2 weeks, by golly, we're going to put out an episode every 2 weeks. And at some point that may get to be too much. But that's where we are right now. So we've been doing it about 2 years. Yeah.
Very good. A couple things. I've shot at Claythorne where you kind of cut your teeth in sporting clays. I've shot there a couple times. I know
Yeah.
recently they had a US Open. But I had a question for you. You piqued my interest before when you talked about the interface between critters and humans. You had any good stories that you can share with the audience?
Oh, wow. Well, I get a lot of back calls. I mean, just this morning, I was getting ready for work at 7 o'clock and my cell phone rang and it was somebody who had a bat in their house last night. And so kind of talking them through that process and how do they decide if they might have been exposed to rabies, and does the bat need to be collected or can we just shoo the bat out of the house or do we need to get shots and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of on the crazy end of the spectrum of things that I might deal with that are challenging to deal with. I actually, speaking of that, in that interface with shooting, at the World Championship in Wisconsin, I got a call from somebody who was dealing with a rabies exposure, and so I was talking to him in the buggy while I was going around and picking up score sheets one day, and some shooters stopped me, and I just had to say, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now. I've got something really important I'm dealing with." And I stopped and they sat there and listened to me talk through this rabies exposure protocol with the person. And they said, "Oh man, yeah, we didn't want to interrupt you with that." But other things, I help a lot of stakeholders firsthand that are having livestock losses to predators. So my role is different from a lot of university extension professionals in that I go out and give a lot of one-on-one help to folks for those predator losses. So dealt with some pretty extreme examples, especially with dogs. You get dogs that are running cattle and they can cause a lot of problems really quickly. So that can be a challenge. The funny ones have to do with people misidentifying critters. So
I can imagine.
So we might I might come into the office and have a voicemail about somebody who's reporting a chupacabra along I-70, in western Kansas, and it's really a mangy coyote.
Right.
But that's kind of a fun thing to listen to sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, we have that in Phoenix. We have coyotes running around their neighborhoods, and people think they're dogs, and
Yeah.
no, they're not dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also piqued my interest when you said polar bears coming through windows. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's been too many come through windows, but the thing about a polar bear attack is they tend to be a predatory attack, whereas black bears, grizzly bears, usually when they attack you, it's because you startled them, unless it's a really big old male black bear, and sometimes they will hunt people, but it's really rare. But polar bears, they tend to be hunting you when they attack a human, and so those attacks tend to lead to death, whereas there's a lot of people who get through a lot of other wildlife attacks because they aren't attacking you because they want to eat you. They're attacking you because you're in their space or they're trying to defend their young or something like that.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that is incredible, Drew. Fantastic. I am so excited that we could get together, and I appreciate your making time to meet with me and be on Shoot from the Hoop. I know you mentioned the squares for hoops too. I wasn't going to put that in the title.
Yeah, we don't see those a lot in the U.S., but they are more common overseas. Yeah,
they are definitely. All right. Well, Drew, I look forward to meeting you in person down the road. Maybe I'll see you down in April at the Worlds.
Yeah, that'd be great. I look forward to seeing you too. And thanks for having me on. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk to folks and get the message out about some of these things. So it's been real good.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yep.
To all of our listeners out there, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. Better yet, even leave a comment. And if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, become a subscriber. I'll continue to bring you leaders in sporting clays and FITASC like Drew. And until next week, everyone, cheers.